All right, so where am I? Well, I am messing with a copy of my refined paint layer, and I'm messing with the color balance. And so far I've played with the highlights and I warmed them up. Now I'm in the shadows and I'm cooling them down. Then I can go to the midtones and I can push them kind of green or magenta or leave them where they are, push them more red, push them more yellow. But I don't like how dark the auto-tone made it. So now I might go to image adjustment and play with the hue saturation and brighten everything a little bit. Intensify the colors if I want to, or even change them completely. So this is just playing with your, actually I like that quite a bit. Playing with your refined paint layer can kind of show you things you didn't see. Now there's a big difference between this and this. Huge difference. Neither one of them now is what I want. I want some combination of them. So I can play with opacity and I can kind of blend them together, and that looks nice. Or I could even try a layer style. So this is a little less predictable. And I could try, my favorites are usually pin light. It helps a little bit. Or soft light. But I think for this one, for the colors, I'm just going to take the opacity down. There it is. And now what can I do? Well, I can merge them. Select them both. Because it doesn't work to have one layer that you're painting on that's only showing at 45%. And I hit Command E, and now they're merged together. Big difference there. All right, now I have new colors I can choose to steal from, to take from, right? And they were generated from my own brush strokes. But this is getting more interesting. I'm liking this more now. And then I'll see areas where it still looks kind of boring, and so I'll still work on the refined paint layer a little bit and just break those up. Remember, you want to bring everything up to the same level of finish. And maybe I just need a little bit more color, a little bit more variety in these areas. You got me. It might be turning on layers that are turned off. Let's see. I've never used it. Nope, I have no idea. Oh, but my pants are gone.
Everything okay over there?
Just seeing if you guys are paying attention. Now there are a lot of, the question was, what does reveal all mean under image? That's a really good question. I have no idea. But that's where Google really comes in handy. There are so many things in Photoshop that I don't touch on in this class, and I am not qualified to speak to. And not everything that Photoshop labels things always makes sense. All right, so remember that we had speed painted before, and so I don't want to get sucked into just doing that all over again with new colors now. So once I'm kind of happy with how it looks in the navigator from a distance, how it looks up close, then I can make myself feel bad by going to View, Print Size, or View 100%, and seeing the actual pixels, and then going, yeah, but there's a lot of just kind of open areas that don't look that great. Especially if you're doing it for printing instead of for just screen resolution. But that's why digital painting takes so long. And you'll see how pretty those brush strokes are, you know, when you customize your own brush and you let them kind of fade into each other. It's got this nice feel. Now, so at this point, it looks good from a distance, but then from up close, it looks like just a lot of little hatchet marks. So now I might want to smooth some areas out. And so for that, I'm going to lock this layer. Almost deleted it. Lock it instead. I'm going to duplicate it. Actually, no, I'm not going to duplicate it. I'm going to make a new blank layer above it. And I'm going to call this the glazing layer. Now, glazing is something you do mostly in oil paint, where you thin the paint so it's transparent, but it gives you a film of color. And this will be a little bit more like watercolor. So far, it's like I've been painting with oils and acrylics with bristle brushes, lots of sharp little edges. So now, I'm going to maybe even use my same brush. I don't see a problem with that. Or maybe I'll switch to my slightly more opaque one that I made before. But I'm going to change it in my brush settings to color dynamics instead of shape dynamics. And what I can do is create a foreground-background jitter. And I can set it to control its fade. This is a color mixing thing, where if I pick two colors, right now it's just black and white, as I paint with it, it will mix between them. And the lighter I press, the more it will do the foreground color. See? So that will help blend and smooth. That's one way to do it with color dynamics. Another is with transfer. And this will just be a classic opacity control. And now I want to control the opacity with my pin pressure. And I'll also jitter it a little bit so it's not always so exact. So now if I add those two together, I'm pressing really lightly as I build it up slowly. And that's just with black and white, or at least this kind of sepia and white. Okay? And that way you can almost smudge with your brush. There's also things like wet edges, which will give you a slightly different approach where things overlap. But it's less predictable than I like. And you can do build up where it will get more opaque more quickly as you work over the top of it. And then, of course, there's smoothing. So, color dynamics can get a little out of control, but let me show you how it works. And then you can still use shape dynamics, but I'm not going to use it for size control anymore. I'm just going to use it for angle jitter, because I still don't want it to be always at the same angle. And I'll create quite a bit of roundness with it. All right, so now this is a different brush, right, than the way I used it before. And I'm on a new layer. Let me delete all that. And now I'm going to start glazing. And I'm going to do a highlight glaze. So I'm going to use Option with my brush tool. And I'm going to select one highlight that's not very colorful, but not pure white either. So maybe this kind of ivory. And then I'm going to use those little arrows and swap foreground to background. And I'm going to pick a more saturated highlight color, like maybe an orange. So, as I press harder, it will get more opaque, and it will go more towards the lighter color. So looking at my reference, I'm going to zoom out now and kind of glaze highlights all over the place. Oh, look at that. Beautiful and soft. Now, I would smooth it even more if it wasn't a furry creature. Right? I'm still working at 70% opacity, but once I'm happy with the smoothing, then I can take it down to an even lower opacity. So I'm just doing it with the highlights, and it's letting the colors underneath come through. And it's not really going to replace like black areas with highlight. Instead, it's just softening and smoothing in the highlight areas and glazing over with this slightly warm color. So on the gray, it looks like this. And by using those color dynamics with the orange, it means I don't need to change colors all the time. So it's kind of nice. And if you do it with a custom brush, if you want a glazing brush, you would soften the brush edges and even take their opacity down at the edge. Okay, remember this is on a new layer for me. And so it looks like that. Ooh. But if you zoom in, you'll see how it starts to blend. It's like a smudge tool. All those little hatchet marks now start to get glazed and smoothed together, at least in the highlights, into something that is maybe a little bit more believable from up close. And again, you want to just attack it. Be strong with your brushes. You can approach your digital painting any way you like. I'm just showing you ways that I like to play with it. And I'll change my approach every time I do a demo. So who knows what I'll be doing by next semester. Okay, if at any time you want to change your color, you just hold down Option. I'll still always have that underline highlight color, but now it's got more red in it at the top. So as I'm glazing, now it's a little bit more red and purplish. And honestly, glazing is the only thing I like about oil painting. But you have beautiful control with those transparent layers. You just don't get that control with acrylic or with watercolor. Now my brush is lagging a bit, so when that happens, you know, it's making the marks after I've already hit the tablet. When that happens, I save it. That means the scratch disk is getting pretty full. And I make sure there aren't any other programs open, and sure enough, I've got way too many programs open. So I'm going to quit those. Try to help Photoshop utilize its internal memory a little bit better. And preview is one you don't think takes a lot of memory, but we tend to have a lot open in our history in preview. So let's try it with that. Okay, so this is my highlight, but then I can do the same thing for shadows. It's like changing from cut edge duotone to soft edge duotone. And then if it lags a lot, I know some of you have had this issue and I've given you this advice. You want to save it, and then you want to actually quit Photoshop and then reopen it. And it's only a little bit of a pain because I will rearrange these things, but it will remember the brushes as long as you've saved it. All right. And then I'm going to turn Photoshop or quit Photoshop completely. And then reopen. And sometimes, if your scratch disk is just all full, then you have to restart your computer to clear that. Okay, at some magical point, and honestly I might be there, you can stop looking at your reference image. It's not